Caput.
All views expressed in this podcast are the opinion of the host and in no way medical advice. Hello everyone, welcome to Caput. Today I have the pleasure of being joined once more by Lee.
Hi Tim, how's the form? All good?
All good. You?
All good.
Thanks for being here.
No problem, anytime.
Today what I thought we could talk about, Lee, is money.
Okay.
Big bad word.
Certainly well related to mental health.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, especially, like I mentioned this in, I think it was the first episode, debt in particular can be very, very crippling for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to start again with just a couple of stats, because I love stats, Lee. Okay. I don't know if you noticed.
I did notice at one point, yeah.
So here's a couple. So I find these really mind-blowing. In November 2021, we were paying £122 million a day in interest, just interest on debt.
That's an unbelievable amount of money just in interest.
Isn't it? Mind-blowing. The biggest burden of debt falls within the 25 to 34-year-old age group.
Okay.
Which I happen to fall into. 37% of that age group said that the burden is either somewhat or heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat of a burden or a heavy burden, sorry. To put it more properly. That's from the Office for National Statistics. So there's a couple, just to set it in context. One other one that I thought was really interesting, the average interest, because I'll tie back to this later, the average interest on a credit card now is 20%, 20 point something percent. Because I've always had this thought, so if you have debt, right, let's say credit card debt for sake of argument, but you also want to save money.
Okay. So
you're working, you know what I mean, let's say you've £500 to save a month. Mm-hmm. Do you save it or do you pay off your debt? And I did a wee bit of a deep dive during one of the lockdowns into all this monetary stuff, try and wrap my head around it, because it's not my forte at all. And someone just put it really simply, and I went, oh yeah. And it's basically, right, well, if the average credit card is charging you 20% interest, if you're lucky at the moment, you might get 1% interest rate on your savings.
Yep.
So there you go. It's a no-brainer. If you have high interest,
pay
debt,
your credit card. Yeah.
Do that first.
Yeah.
And yeah, most of those guys that I ended up looking at, researching about finances, they basically have quite a simple sort of 3-step system, which I think is really interesting because it's so simple. Mm-hmm. So it is pay off all your high interest debt first. Okay. That's number one. Number two, save what you call an emergency fund. Mm-hmm. And the reason that you have that is kind of what it says on the tin. So if your washing machine breaks, your car explodes, you don't end up in a compromised position where you go, fuck, I have to
borrow,
take out a payday loan or do something silly, or just have to really, pick up 1,000 extra shifts and wreck yourself.
Yeah.
And then after that, when you have those two things taken care of, then you can start investing that extra £500 or whatever you might have a month, which makes a ton of sense to me.
Yep.
It's just getting that extra £500 every month is the tricky part, isn't it?
That's never easy making money, is it?
So yeah, the topic's really interesting to me because, I mean, I've had a bit of credit card debt. It was nothing shocking. It was, about 5k probably over a handful of cards.
Okay.
And it's just one of those things. Yeah, as you say, it's very much tied to your mental health. It's stuff you don't. I think it's like George. Do you know George Carlin?
Yes, a comedian,
American comedian. Yep. He says you spend money you don't have on things you don't need
to impress people you don't want, or you don't.
To impress people you don't want. Well, I believe I wasn't trying to impress people, and it was stuff I needed. But you know what I mean. It's certainly easy to spiral.
Yeah.
It's just too easy. It's too easy to do.
Yeah, certainly easy to carry away materialistic things.
So with credit card debt, my experience was it was very easy to spiral. You think £1,000 is fine, and
next minute it's two, next minute it's 3, yep.
5. But I guess like a lot of things, it was only in hindsight. It was only whenever it was finally gone, which just took me to really, really focus on it and dedicate myself to, making sacrifices in other ways to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I certainly felt like a weight
refreshed,
go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm at the point where I have that little emergency fund too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And those YouTube finance experts, they're spot on.
Yeah.
That on top of no debt
mm-hmm.
gives you this
Peace of
brilliant
mind.
sense of just freedom,
mm-hmm.
that you go, yeah, just if something does just crop up that I really don't expect, it's okay.
Yeah, I can handle it.
That's what it's for. I'll
Mm-hmm.
not freak out. I'll not panic. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a better position to be in, clearly. Yeah. Certainly for your mental health.
Very much so.
Yeah.
That would be some interesting stats to get. The link between debt levels and mental health.
Yeah, very closely correlated, I would say. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if such a study has happened or not, but
maybe for many obvious reasons. The money makes the world go round, doesn't it?
It certainly does. One other thing I wanted to touch on, I was talking to a friend of mine there a few weeks ago
mm-hmm.
about, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Nope.
So if you're watching on YouTube, I'll stick a picture up and you can look at it. If you're on Spotify, just Google it. It'll come up. So it's basically this psychologist who I believe was from the 30s, and he had this very incredible mission in life,
mm-hmm.
which was to work out what is the point of life.
Okay.
The age-old question,
Mm-hmm.
Apparently that's where he started. And he was only 35 at the time when he came up with this chart. And as you can see from the pictures, it's like a triangle, a
mm-hmm.
pyramid. And at the bottom, you have the sort of basic physiological needs, biological needs, food, water, shelter.
Yep.
The second one up is safety and security and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my friend were chatting about this the other day, and I kind of got us thinking, so if you cannot feel safe and secure,
mm-hmm.
which would require a certain amount of money to do so, then you can't move farther up Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Okay.
And the very top one is sort of what he calls self-actualization, which I don't fully understand, obviously, but it includes things like creative endeavors.
Okay.
So art,
right.
I would imagine, So it was just very interesting to see, because this is a very widely accepted thing now in psychology, that this has a lot of merit. So I just thought that was a great way to kind of show that, if you don't have a certain amount of money in order to be safe and secure, which, obviously in this country, that percentage is a lot lower than a lot of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have that, you sort of, according to him at least, can't actually move up in a linear path towards that
mm-hmm.
tip top that everyone wants to get to.
Well, you're not in a good basic starting point. Yeah, you can't move forward.
Yeah, wee bit sort of. I want to say it's scary. It's not scary. It's just very. I just think it's good to know.
Yeah,
it's good to think about.
Yeah.
I had Maslow. Some boy for a 35-year-old coming up with that, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, something we all question, I think, at some point in our lives. What life's all about, isn't it, really?
Absolutely, yeah. So one other thing that these YouTube money gurus have taught me, have you ever heard of the Latte Effect?
No, it's another one that's fresh to me, Tim.
All right, well, there's a lot of different words for it, names for it, but you can imagine basically what it means is when you spend small amounts of money regularly on things like lattes.
Okay.
And how if you didn't spend that money, that small amount of money over a regular period of time adds up in the long term,
mm-hmm.
especially if you put it into somewhere with compound interest to make a lot of money.
Yep.
And it's really just, the concept is just to make people a bit more cognizant of the little things.
Yeah. I suppose it's like people that give up smoking and expect to miraculously be rich because they're spending so much on cigarettes every day, but they don't put the money away, so they don't notice the difference. But if they were, then again, it's just similar to that theory that you're saying. Well, then it'll just escalate and they'll see they have got the money.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's been me, absolutely, Latte Effect.
Mm-hmm.
Literally.
Yeah,
if
with
you ever
lattes,
worked in
yep.
Was that?
Yeah, with lattes.
With lattes.
Yeah.
If you ever work in a city centre and there's too many caffeine heroes was my personal choice. Like, there's days I'd be buying 3, in one day, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love to know how much I've gave Cafe Nero in 1 year.
It's maybe not a bad thing. I don't like coffee then.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this whole discussion, you know, that people will have about, well, you have to enjoy life. You know, it's not all about saving for the future. You know, you have to enjoy yourself, and certainly that's true. It's a bit like what we tend to end up talking about, Lee, all the time, which is balance.
I knew the word was coming some point.
Right.
There, yeah.
And it's not even, you know, lattes, replace that word with whatever it is for you. It's different for everyone, but it's one that people can all understand. I just think it's a really interesting theory. Again, something I'd recommend to anyone, go on Google and just type in compound interest calculator. Blow your mind. You know, little amounts of money saved regularly for a long time.
so quickly to so much. Yeah.
It, you know, it's sort of like a tipping point eventually. Basically, yeah, it snowballs to a point where the interest you're receiving is worth more than the amount of money you're putting in.
Actually,
And then because you then get interest on your interest,
then that's when you really start to make money. Yeah.
And then some guys will do things like, you know, when guys and girls, will invest in things like, you know, stocks that shares, will give you dividends. And if you let those dividends go back in as well, it's kind of like even more interest. Which leads me to one other thought, which is, just the mindset of that. You know, again, it's like, yes, it is all about balance. But at the end of the day, something that I learned recently, probably in the last couple of years, is if you don't have any money, you can't help people very much.
Yep, totally agree.
Do you know?
I know it's the same perspective. I used to sort of have a dislike for money because there was so much badness happening around the world with it, with wars and things like that, and the things people were doing for money. And I had a bit of a hatred for money for a long time. So again, found it very hard to sort of attract money. I had survived to tread water. But since I sort of changed my mindset and realised that money's a necessity to get through life, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's down to who has the money. If good people have the money, they can do good things with it, and people with a bad mindset can do bad things, certainly. So it's certainly better everybody with a good mindset having money. So I changed my mindset with money. Didn't have such a hatred for it, and I certainly noticed a change in my life from it did change my mindset with it. Certainly wasn't as hard to come across. I'm certainly not saying money just falls on my lap by no means. But I'm not fighting against the system to make money anymore, where I think if your mindset's against the system to make something, it's like anything. Your mindset's against having a positive life. Your mindset's constantly on depression. You're going to be depressed. You need to change that mindset and have enthusiasm for what you want to do. I mean, if you want to have a happy life every day, get up in the morning and have enthusiasm to have that happy life. Don't get up and feel sorry for yourself and live in that trap. It's the same with money. If you constantly think that you're going to be skint, then you're going to be skint. If you're saying you're going to be skint all the time, that's going to materialize. And I'm a firm believer of that with how life works in the law of attraction.
I absolutely agree, yeah. You mentioned law of attraction. Could you explain that just briefly if people don't know what it is?
Well, I just think it is what I sort of said as regards if you're feeling depressed all the time and you're thinking life's being hard on you and you've such a hard life, you're sort of creating your own reality because you're living that. Where I believe if you believe that things are going to get better for you and you get up with a positive mindset, so you can get up in the morning, you get up and think, oh, this day is going to be terrible, and for example, I'm going to record this podcast with Tim, it's going to be a shambles, it's going to fall apart. Well, if you're going with that mindset, there's a brave high chance of that happening. But if you're going with a mindset that, you know what, we'll get up, the day's going to be great, we're going to handle everything that comes at us, then there's a lot more chance of handling everything comes at you, and there's a lot more chance of that happening, because I do firmly believe that the law of attraction is a serious thing. And I do think we create our own reality a lot of the time. Not like magic, certainly, but to a degree we're certainly influencing reality with our mind of creating. I mean, if you can dwell on something that's happened to you for years, you're creating that reality every day because you're living in the past. You live in the past and create anxiety, you live in the future and create anxiety. I think we'll need to learn to live in the now, and that's how you handle anxiety, is by living in the now. I mean, the past can't harm you living in now, neither can the future. And that's, I think, a big key to handling anxiety and depression, is realising that you're living in the now. And a lot of people with anxiety and depression, I think, tend to live in the past or in the future. So they're anxious or apprehensive about the future or the past, and I think that's a problem. It's the same with money. If you had money problems before and you still dwell on them a bit, it's the same, it's going to carry on. And if you're worrying about money and worrying about making it, then there's more chance of not making it. I think if you're confident that you're going to make enough money to survive and get by and have a quality life, there's more chance of that happening, certainly. And I think that just goes hand in hand with both thoughts in your life.
That's a really, really good point. It's so good, I'm making a note about it. Genuinely. You reminded me as well when you were talking there about law of attraction.
Uh-huh.
I heard this story once about Jim Carrey,
Okay.
that he's a firm believer. I think there's all different names for law of attraction, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He basically he wrote himself a check for $1 million. Did you hear this one? And he used to drive up and down, what is that road in LA? Hollywood Boulevard.
Yes,
is it?
yes. Well, they'll do well.
And park outside and look at the theaters
Mhm.
and see
Himself,
visualize
yep,
his name
Yep.
on the movie starring what Jim Carrey. And long story short, he dated the check for, I can't remember the details, but say it was
Yep.
18 months,
Mhm.
and something like, again making this up, but it was within a week or a month or something of that date, he landed Dumb and Dumber.
Yep, brilliant.
And could cash that check
Totally
and some.
firmly believe that that's all to do with his mindset and the law of attraction and using that to his benefit. There's no doubt about that. I read a similar story. I can't think of who it was off the top of my head. I don't know if it was Tony Robbins or someone else, but it was again one of the other entrepreneurs who sort of encourages law of attraction things. They done exactly the same. They had a picture of a house that they wanted and they just kept it on their wall for 5 years and envisioned themselves living in that house. Believe it or not, 5 years later, something came through and they ended up owning the house. It was one of the things I read in the Law of Attraction a lot of years ago that encouraged me to actually read more into the Law of Attraction and how it actually works.
It got me thinking about one other thing specifically related to mental health. I think one thing that you could parallel money and mental health is they're both, and they shouldn't be, but they're both kind of taboo subjects.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, kind of link between the two of them. You don't talk about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens? You end up in a shit state.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense,
No.
but it's just the culture we live in. It tells you that, and of course, that's the whole point of this podcast.
That's what you're trying to break. Yep.
Tell people,
Mhm.
it's fine, and
Yeah.
listen, we all screw up. We all end up in debt. We all get depressed and anxious and end up addicted to things.
That's exactly it.
Right. But yeah, again, so money is the same. It's just one of those weird things.
I think it's pride with a lot of people. The same with depression, anxiety, and so on. And money's the same. It's just pride. People have this pride of people judging them and worrying what people think, sadly, and that's just society nowadays. But that, I think, is the main reason people find it taboo to talk about mental health and talk about money problems, because they see it as a weakness, and people don't like to show their weaknesses, and that's society nowadays. I do firmly believe that's what that boils down to.
It's a shame. I'm sure we could end up tying that into a whole lot of other things. Social media springs to mind. It's all about
comparing each other's lives with each other. So everybody's only going to show their best version of themselves on Facebook. They're not going to show, unless obviously they're craving attention. They're saying how they're in hospital and they don't want people to know why.
That's true.
That old chestnut. But
oh yeah.
I mean, that again, it's just that's for attention. There's so many. I don't believe social media can certainly be a good thing, but I think it's more of a bad thing than a good thing.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, we're back to balance again.
Yeah.
It's a balance in your feed. If your feed's full of negativity or your feed's full of people showing you how fake their life really is when it's not, and so on, then you need to balance that out. And if you're getting so much stuff that's making you compare yourself to others and compare yourself to things that aren't really happening, then you need to change your feed. If there's negativity in your feed every day, if you're looking at war on social media, you're looking at this and that and the other, and the social media feed is negative, then that's going to reflect in your mindset. You're going to have that negativity throughout yourself. Where if you're changing your feed to positive, that's going to help you move forward and keep a positive mindset all day, there's no doubt.
Yep, very much so. I think it's just to be, is cognizant the word, just to be aware of these things.
What you're feeding yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same as food. Mental health, it's exactly the same as food. You're feeding yourself good foods, your system's going to be good. Do you know what I mean? It's the same with your mind. It's down to what you feed it. You feed it good positive stuff throughout the day, it's going to be a lot healthier for you than it is feeding it a lot of negative stuff. I mean, hence I don't watch news channels for the specific reason it's all negativity. I don't need to fill my brain with that negativity. I'd rather use that time and utilize it to fill it with positivity or something education wise, or do you mean something I can get from it, or something's going to drag me down mindset wise.
Just going back for a moment to what you talked about with you had this mentality that sort of money in the hands of the rich.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it always is, and then they end up doing sort of evil things with it, and that's I was totally the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably only in the last handful of years I started to learn that like I said earlier, if you don't have any resources, you've got nothing to give.
Exactly.
And I think that's so important, and it links to the taboo part. Like, if we keep not talking about it, and we keep not trying to become, like, I would argue just, that kind of rich mindset versus a poor mindset.
Yeah.
It's so vital. It's like you can have a rich mindset but not be financially wealthy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Because you don't need to be, you don't need millions of pounds to have a rich mindset.
No, definitely not.
But it's so helpful.
Yeah.
And it helps your mental health. That's the key
it's
point.
cutting down that stress. Yeah.
Yep.
Clearly.
You know.
Financial stability means a lot to mental health. Like, there's no doubt.
Yeah. And I think, even other things in the culture. Again, I was having a conversation with a friend recently on this, but like, have you ever thought about like the way people never talk about their salary within a company in particular?
Yeah.
You know, so you've got sort of one person here doing the same job, for example, and they don't know what each other's earn.
Yeah.
And we're sort of saying, well, who do you think that benefits?
Yeah. Is it down to pride? Is it down to ego? You have the reasons too to wonder that you're curious about of why people don't discuss this. That's what gets me.
Yeah. But if it benefits anyone, it's the employer.
Yeah, no doubt. All day long.
You know? Because this person could be getting paid
twice
lot
as much as
less.
the other person, yeah.
And if they just told the other person, well, hang on, I'm doing
the same job, yeah.
You know? So there's
changes the hierarchy, yeah.
What's that?
It's all about the hierarchy, isn't it, really? Yeah.
But there's things to be said there about, you know, again, just a little change in mindset. Well, like, let's just be a bit more open about it, and you get to win.
And it becomes more of a fair level playing field.
Yeah.
Yeah, as it should. But again, it's like anything, there's only ever good is going to come out about talking about certain subjects, and that's certainly one of them. But it's the same with every subject. It's the whole reason of your podcast. It's about talking. Talking solves so many different things.
Yeah.
And that's just what it's about. People need to talk about so much more. Again, it's the same as a taboo subject I specialise in, the cannabis. It's just, you need to talk about it. It's the same with this. Everything. It's so many. We keep coming back to the same problem. People just won't address it, won't talk about it. It's comfort. People need to be comfortable to talk to each other. That's the main concern here. And again, to me, that's all down to ego and pride mostly.
Yeah.
Again, society breeds that.
Yep. Absolutely agree. And especially, just to keep it really on brand here, Caput, especially for guys.
Yeah, yeah.
It really is, because I mean, there just is this still societal pressure to kind of
have that masculine sort of, yeah.
I think we all get the idea. I hope we all get the idea. The idea is
your mindset can help create your reality, and we should discuss everything a lot
money
more.
Is important. If you're someone like me and someone like Lee, who we used to have this mindset, it's not helpful. No, money is vital. It's important. It doesn't mean you have to be greedy. It doesn't mean you have to be a dick with it. But if you can learn to use it to your benefit and the benefit of others, it's an amazing resource. Because
the more you give, the more comes back, and that's life. That's life in general. The more you give to people, the more you get back.
Exactly. And again, if you've nothing to give, you can't get anything back.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Lovely. Lee, somehow we've blasted through 30 minutes-ish.
Standard.
So we must wrap this up. It was very much a pleasure again to speak with you.
Anytime, Tim. It's been great.
Thank you. This podcast, Caput, is available on YouTube at Caput Network, which is home also to your podcast, Lee, which is called
Can I Chat?
Can I Chat. So go on there if you want to watch the video. If you want to listen, you will find it on either Spotify or iTunes. And thanks again.
Thank you, Tom.
Caput.
Watch the full video podcast on YouTube at Caput Network.